imagine if you could go back to day one of Ethereum or MakerDAO or any of these and be part of those conversations. How cool would that be? Just being a fly on the wall. Whether we succeed or we fail as a network state, the ultimate goal, I think, is to try and learn and build, see what happens so that other people can either build with us or build on the shoulders of what we've done in the past. Welcome to the first ever Epoch Islander Assembly. We're going to try to do this every Friday and keep that pace. There might be some days where we have to move it around, but that's going to be the goal. I will also say today, being the first one, we probably will hit some bumps and bruises along the way. It's going to be a little wonky, just trying to find our pace and find the timing and the agenda and all that. So bear with me. And then next, I wanted to just say is these meetings might evolve over time. So what we have today, I'd love for suggestions, whether in the chats or on Zoom at the end, or in Discord on how to make it better. Okay, so let's jump in. So there's three goals for this call today. We want to basically review the state of Epoch Island and just share some recent happenings to get people caught up to where we're at. We want to facilitate conversations around pushing Epoch Island forward. So whether that's from Moai Labs presenting some conversations, we've also got two Islander conversations that are on the group from Muzu's and from PAX as well. And then at the end, near the end, we're going to basically open it up to some well, the goal is to foster some relationships amongst the Islanders and the elders, but we're going to open it up to comments, questions, and intros, and you kind of get to choose your own path on what you would like there. I haven't had to call out anybody just yet for muting, but I will say as a quick reminder, if you guys don't have your mics muted, Steve might have to be the bad guy and mute those. I haven't heard any noises yet, surprising. So congrats. Uh, cool. And I will just mention, as you guys can see, I'm going through this trying to be kind of quick, but raise your hand. We want this to be interactive. We don't want this to be a one-way conversation. So like if you actually need to say something, I think I can see raised hands notified on there. So yeah, just feel free to do that and I'll take pauses. I'd rather it be kind of a ping pong conversation. Cool. It wouldn't be a first meeting without a disclaimer, a few disclaimers, which we'll try to do every meeting. But you might have seen this. You probably have seen this on Discord if you've been in there. But a few of these, what we're trying to do is basically never been done before. And although we have very high optimism, it can work, and we wouldn't be putting in all this effort if we didn't think it could. It does have a high chance of failure. We don't say these things to scare people away, just to kind of set expectations that this is going to be hard and it's not going to be just a walk in the park thing that's going to happen overnight. Number two, there's no single group or person responsible for building Epoch Island. So if you want something done, it's encouraged to take action and make it happen. Or I understand most people in the world are busy. Help us find somebody who can do that. So there's so many of you elders on the call that I don't have the ability or the know-how to do things. So rather than do them, I just went out and recruited you guys, and it's working well so far. Critical feedback is encouraged. I hope this is one of the biggest parts of our DNA is open conversations and the ability to have critical feedback. But we're not gonna have negativity. So there's obviously a subjective line there, but we will be holding it to the best of our abilities. Number five, Epoch does have a native currency, but you and you alone are responsible for your financial choices. And then fifth, this meeting is being recorded. So don't do anything crazy that you don't want to be on the internet forever. Um, so getting into if you're watching this in the future, or maybe you're on the call and you're just trying to get caught up, I'm going to start every meeting with just these two basic principles. Currently, Epoch is a decentralized collective of builders, investors, and creators across the world. However, our end game in the future, we aim to create the world's first network state by the year 2030. That timeline could be optimistic or pessimistic, but it is what we are shooting for right now. So, getting into the first goal of the meeting to kind of give a review and a recap of the state of Epoch Island and all the recent activity. I think one of the main things we'd like to accomplish and I'd like to push for is really being a number driven or at least number aware project. And so sometimes numbers aren't fun to look at. If you're not doing well, but they're so important that they just stay top of mind. So every single Islander assembly, we want to look at these numbers. We want to force ourselves to look at these numbers, even if they're headed in the wrong direction, so that we know um, what what we can do or figure out what we can do to fix them. So with only being live for about 2 months now, our population of elders is about 26 people, about to be 27. Well, that's off-chain nominations, but they still probably about 10 of those still need to go through on-chain nominations. Um, the population of V Epoch holders, which is our best kind of barometer of a citizen as of now, is 127. The Treasury, these numbers were done last night, so this might be a little different, but the Treasury, our market cap is at 2.9 million for the token. And what we put here for the Treasury value is essentially given that we can mint max of 10% of the token supply, this is basically if we did want to like max out the inflation of the token with at 10%, which nobody is proposing now, it would be about $290,000. So this number, this treasury value in the future will include the assets that we have from ETH to USDC. If we ever get real world assets in the future, it'll include that. But as of now, it's basically our minting ability from the Epoch token. And then our revenue is zero and zero. So again, um, wanting to make that front and center, that is a big 2024 goal. I'd like to add a little asterisk here that even if we successfully raise through the ICO, personally, I would not consider that as revenue. That is simply funding, but it doesn't mean we're generating revenue and offering a service or utility. So important to keep an eye on this. I see in the chat here. ITO question mark. Maybe I'm not sure how long those comments, but we are talking about the ITO on the meeting on the agenda today. So let's get into just a quick recap. So on January 1st, a 250,000 Epoch tokens were airdropped basically to Epoch Islanders, which are all claimable right now in your DApp. If anybody who has V Epoch, those are claimable. Just some people may or may not know why they received these, but throughout the year, we do think that rewarding the Epoch holders for basically staying loyal is important, and it also is important for kind of locking in some form of liquidity. So while anybody can claim these right now, they would have to return them if they withdrew their liquidity early. So we believe this is kind of like a asynchronous liquidity mining, essentially. And what's also really cool is if somebody exits early, their portion of Epoch gets distributed to all the other V Epoch holders. So depending on what you had, you're probably going to earn more by when people exit the system, which is pretty cool. Um, Go to the next one here. We also did an airdrop to people who went to, so Balaji hosted these meetup conferences about 2 years ago, 2021, maybe 3 years now. And he called it was called 1729.com. And it's a really cool meaning behind it. But basically, the early adopters of network states, we did a small airdrop of a 1729 tokens to them. Um, that's actually, Steve, maybe we should add that to the agenda for maybe this call or future calls. Like we did the airdrop, but like let's do a post recap of like how that went, how we could have done better, stuff like that. Because I don't think we've seen an impact yet, but we do still want to try to make sure these people know that they have the tokens in their wallet.
Yeah, absolutely. It's on the backlog.
Cool. Yeah, obviously, so this is a big week. On Wednesday of this week, we hosted the world's first initial time offering. Um, and it's sold out. So 90% of it filled within the 7 minutes and 100% filled within the first 33 minutes. I know many of you on this call were even trying to get in and it went pretty quickly. Um, I would like to add, we're extremely happy with how it went. Um, Now, there's obviously other variables to consider here. Um, if the price of Epoch doesn't actually stay above the price, the market cap that people locked in at, we would expect that that capital will be unlocked. So this is a great initial start. But now the ball's in our court as a project to start adding value to the token so that we can retain this capital. So what I love about this ITO, whether the we actually retain all the capital from the ITO or not, I personally look at it as a success because in one direction, if the price of the token goes down, the ITO was successful for the participants because they saved money whenever they would normally lose money in an ICO. And if the price of the token goes above what it was, then the treasury grows and the participants have made some return on their money. So I'm really excited about this, that we've kind of put ourselves in a win-win situation, at least for the protocol. But it is something to consider. The treasury will not, actually keep the revenue unless the price stays healthy or increases a little, which is always the original goal of the ITO, is to align ourselves between the token holders and the project and to make sure that those are aligned. Chris, I see your hand. I'd love to shoot it over to you for a second.
Yeah, I just want to kind of ask a question and pick up on something there. Obviously, if the market value drops and people relinquish their positions in the ITO,
Yeah.
what would happen to those positions? They become available to everybody else again, but then how long is the duration of the wave? So
Yeah,
let's say worst case scenario, it drops. I
sure,
have a position, I relinquish it.
sure.
Do those people then have 7 days left?
It's a great question. And that was kind of the second point I was going to make is even though we sold out, does not mean that there is not a chance for new people to enter, as you mentioned before. So, Chris, to give you a very clear, it's a 10-day ITO. Let's just do 5 days. So half the time goes by, 5 days go by, and then somebody wants to back out. If they back out, immediately that position becomes available for somebody new to jump in and claim. So it can become unsold out, is another way of saying that. And that new person has 5 days, the remainder of the 5 days. So it is a fixed in
So it's
date
a
duration.
10-day wave, and
Yeah.
whatever position you get in, you've already burnt the time to get into the wave.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And it's curious to see, like, there's not a real benefit of withdrawing your capital early. Like, you might as well give yourself the full length of the time, unless you like need the capital or opportunity cost. You'd rather move it to invest. Like, so there could be people withdraw in a day or two if they want. So I'm going to keep an eye on it as well. But that I think that is a big misconception, and you guys will see. I'll keep referencing Steve here. So Steve is, I know you guys see my face and a lot, but Steve is like the workhorse behind the scenes. I'm like, Steve, let's remember to remind the community that just because it's sold out doesn't mean you should give up on trying to participate in this round if things change. So cool. That's a really good comment. By the way, Chris, are you Krellborn on Discord?
Yes, I am.
Okay, okay. I remember we met like a year or two ago. So
Yeah, we've had a couple of calls and exchanged a couple of emails before.
okay, but like on face, I think I've only seen your face once. Okay,
Yeah, my camera was bought last time.
okay, good. I was trying to connect the dots there. So yeah, that was the ITO. A small kind of note. I don't like to. I was unsure if I should share this or not, but again, because we want to make sure we manage expectations. But the ITO protocol is for ourselves initially as a case study, but the intent was always if it goes well for ourselves, other projects will probably see that and want to use this technology, and that will eventually add revenue back to Epoch Island. Um, and we realize the best marketing campaign is a successful ITO. Like no matter how much you tell people about the ITO, seeing it sold out, seeing these other things can probably bring some inbound attention. And so, sure enough, within the first day, we got reached out to. I guess I just won't share the project name, but a project that you guys are probably familiar with. Brian, you're probably very familiar with them. Was trying to build a technology similar to this, and they had just started, and they were like, if you've already built it, um, then we might as well just use you guys. And they're looking to do a pretty large raise in 2024. And so it's looking that, so we're going through the conversations about what part of the protocol would you change? Do you like? Would you need a white label to do this for yourselves? Just like having those conversations. But it was really cool to see somebody cold reaching out to us to do this. It wasn't like us trying to recruit people. And so that's the end goal. I think if we see a little success, we will start to see some more inbound. And then especially whenever we have Brian, I see you coming to me, I'll just finish this, but especially when we see what's not on the DApp right now is the supply side front end. So basically that means the ability to create positions. We have created a front end for ourselves to use, but it's not fully polished, so we haven't released it. But it'll be interesting to see once we just like release that, do people just start like I would love to just go add in like 1,000 epoch at like $1 and see what happens with a 20% fee, just to do it would be kind of fun. Brian, I see you came unmuted. Did you have something to say?
I was just going to ask for any outreach, not just the one group who's interested in the ITO, but anyone who responded about the ITO in general. Do you know if they were just following on Twitter? Were they following a specific person who's an elder, or how did they even come across it since we're still pretty early on?
You asking the specific one that did outreach to us?
And broadly, both. Just like that specific one, but also just anyone else who's commented or had interest in the ITO.
Yeah.
As that.
And are you talking as a like a project potential user or like an IT or like both, like a participant in the ITO and a creator of their own ITO, or just want to make sure I understand fully?
No, just simply
Just in general, like how
for
are we getting
example, like
people?
like the one company
Yeah.
or project that reached out,
Yeah.
and anyone else who maybe tweeted or messaged you or said
Sure.
something like with interest on the ITO.
Sure.
Has that been mainly on Twitter? Was it through Discord? Was it
Um,
something random? Did they show up at your house? I
Twitter,
was just curious, like,
yeah,
yeah,
Twitter's the primary vehicle right now. So this specific one, I had actually reached out to the founder to be an elder, and he was a little busy. And then what was really cool is I had a conversation like a month ago, and then somebody on his team on Twitter saw the ITO, sent it to him, and said, "Hey, this looks familiar. We should do something." So yeah, someone on his team sent it to the CEO. Basically, is how that went. And just so you guys know, an interesting part of that conversation I had with the founder, the CEO, is he referenced something similar to Algorand did something like this a year or two ago. Um, and I'm not familiar with that, but that was his frame of reference. And he said the thing that um, the one friction point that Algorand had, they did it for a year, and then you couldn't return your tokens at any point in time. You had to wait an entire year. And then at the end you could return it. But they said they had a lot of people participate and then immediately short sell. So like that does need to be considered on if people do something like this and then were to short sell the token, that could be like an attack vector of the token price for the short term. So it was an interesting, really walking through the potential, like what could be the mechanisms and customizations that you'd want in an ITO protocol. So we released V1, but what does V2 of the ITO protocol look like? Does it mean that the creator can say there's no takebacks, or that you get, for example, this person suggested instead of the Epoch tokens going directly to you, they would go to maybe a separate smart contract, and then once you claim them, you give up your rights to your underlying principal. So kind of like a waiting room of your Epoch. That's like a one-way door. So I'm getting a little into the weeds here, but it was a really interesting conversation about the ITO. Cool. Any other comments or questions about the ITO?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right, sweet. Yeah, I'm really interested in this. I'm also interested if we think that the ITO is like eligible for something like a physical redemption.
Uh-oh. Did he cut out for you
Oh,
guys?
sorry.
Hmm.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I heard the physical was the last word I heard. A physical what?
Okay. So if we think that an ITO could be redeemable for something like a physical redemption. So let's say like you get into the ITO, you get your tokens, and then you redeem it by coming to an event. You redeem it by like booking something.
Mm. That's definitely possible. There's like obviously if that person is willing to accept that centralized trust of that conversion of the token to the physical thing, then that's a great I love that. I love that idea. Was there a
I think
Okay.
we could make it. Yeah, I mean, so I'm thinking about MetaCamp specifically. We run these events in Costa Rica every year, and like we're building the campus right now. We bought all the land, so it's like this concept could be interesting. It's like, what if we do an ITO for like pre-sales of people coming to the campus to the event? We offer some like substantial discount for people who buy the tokens now. They can redeem them by X time, and if they are not able to redeem them, maybe the smart contract automatically reverts the token value back to them, where the funds are like held in an escrow.
So there's actually a
Interesting.
really cool piece of tech years ago that would, its use case then isn't this, but would probably fit. And it was there was like necklaces for like it was some stupid dating app. And you put your profile in, and when you were close to people who matched your preferences, it would buzz or vibrate or whatever. We could do something similar. So it's not a physical redemption of everybody in Argentina or whatever. It's you have to be in a collection of holders of greater than 5 or 10, and it becomes a spread community as opposed to a singular place. That would remove a lot of the barriers.
Mm. Oh yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I'd love to like jam and kind of like
Yeah,
whiteboard how these things could be used.
let's have a breakout meeting with that, and I'll throw it to Steve as well. I think the whole meeting like agenda, Steve, could be like, what are these use cases for the ITO we're not even thinking about? And then, for example, with what you just brought up, there's probably a million that we haven't even thought of that are cool. And I'd rather build towards what people want us to actually use rather than like what we think we should be building. So that would be really fun. I see that Pax, you've had your hand up for a second. You have a comment?
Yeah, I hope you can hear me well. Basically, what I wanted to say is I really appreciate the idea about involving physical goods and physical access to property or venues. But what I think we should possibly start with is basically mint rights for NFT collections. You get a spot in the whitelist that you can relinquish, and then you can decide whether you want to buy in or not, or you can even trade it to give it to somebody else. But basically, what you get is an option to purchase an NFT from a collection. This could be a pretty straightforward thing to implement, and I think collections could benefit from it. Even if we do our own thing, it could still be like a good thing for us. So it's just like a brainwave I've had from this
Yeah.
discussion.
There's so many ways to take this. You guys are getting my brain spinning. Like even as you were talking there, I was thinking about somebody like, you know how Kickstarter works. It's like, hey, try to put in your money here, and then if we hit our goal, then we'll keep the money and build the thing. Whether it's NFTs or even if it's like I'm trying to write a book, you could say put your ETH in here, and then if you get access to my book first. But if I don't end up writing the book, then you can like exit because I didn't do a good job. So there's like so many cool use cases I haven't even thought of. So let's have a breakout meeting with that. Because I feel like this meeting can probably be 10 hours if we talk about all the things we actually want to talk about. But thanks for everybody who just jumped in there. I could see that this is a point of interest, so we should carve out some more time for this. Just a quick reference. I probably should have showed this first, but if you guys already didn't see, obviously on the left here is the first step that you do in the ITO. If you're just watching this, and you're like, what the heck is an ITO? On the left, you find an ITO position, and on the right, you lock up tokens, and it'll immediately give you an upside token, as we call it in our case here, we gave epoch tokens, and then you have until that duration ends, up until the duration ends, to return those upside tokens back to your underlying collateral. And so moving on from the ITO, another thing we launched this week because the ITO was very successful, and we're trying to get this visible on the DApp, is like if you don't want to miss future ITO waves and positions, we do have a newsletter capture now. Of course, Web 2 emails, some people don't want to do that, but if you do, you can go to epochisland.io/newsletter. Steve, if you could put that in the chat, epochisland.io/ sorry, epochisland.io/insider. I messed that up. I'll just type it. There you go. All right. So another thing that happened yesterday, I had a really fun call with Patrick. Uma invited us to be on basically their Twitter Spaces. Really fun. Encourage you guys to play the recording. Steve, I'm just throwing a million things out at you, but if you can go find that recording link and share it in the chat, could be fun as well for people to get easy access to that. In the future weeks, I'm going to start breaking out this slide into like who's been nominated and who was approved as an elder. So like when we do these Friday recaps, it'll be like, all right, Monday through Friday, who were the elders that were nominated on Snapshot, and then also recapping who got approved by a majority vote. But today I just put in 24 of them. Many of your faces are obviously here as well. We do have an Islander of the week. Hopefully Ninchi is still here. Ninchi is still here. Ninchi, I didn't give you a heads up on this, but congrats. You are the Islander of the week.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
I didn't have a chance, not even to say hello, but what better moment than this one? So surprised, thankful. Let's move on, and I will try to do my best also as we go. Thanks.
Yeah, of course, Ninchi, and for those of you who haven't seen him, Discord, Ninchi, completely on his own time, not getting paid for it, is just helping wherever he can. All the things that I want to represent an Islander: positive, upbeat, proactive, helpful. Ninchi has been killing it this week, so thank you, Ninchi, for that. Some memes of the week, I will say, I created these memes, so but they win by default because they were the only memes created. So please create them in the future and maybe you'll get a spot up here. But protocol owned liquidity is cool, but what's cooler? Citizen owned liquidity. We're going to talk about this a little on this call. It was kind of ambiguous meme, but we will talk about it a bit. And then I really enjoyed the ICO, IDO, ITO, Pooh Bear meme here as well. Fun fact about me, I probably shouldn't share this on a recorded line, but my sister calls me Pooh Bear. So there's something about me. So tweets of the week. I don't know. This was actually posted a month ago on Farcaster. But I just think it was really cool to give like it was motivation for me to understand. I think a lot of people get caught up on network states because they think that you need to create this big, massive country with tons of land. But you don't necessarily have to have that much to achieve these. And so in either directions, whether we succeed or we fail, we might as well be bold in what we attempt to do. And I really like Balaji's. There's another graphic that I had to cut out here, but it's a really, really good image if you guys can find just the stats on that. This was another tweet that we made. I think it was actually the first day that we posted it, I felt that the messaging kind of got lost in what we were tending to say. I think Josh, you made a really good point. The tweet said something along the lines of like fight or flight, the choice is yours. But I'm sharing this here because I think it's really personal to what I believe is when you're facing this insurmountable object or what feels like that, you can either fight against the regime that you're in, and Coinbase is the only stock I own because I want to support them in their endeavors. And I want to fight against these things in the US and in other countries. Or it's not an or conversation, but or you create an alternative escape. So for those of you seeing Coinbase's marketing campaign, I love them. Update the system. Encourage you guys to go watch those. We're trying to create some similar marketing branded videos around escape the regime with a different take on that. Apologies for anybody making comments. Been a little difficult to keep up with the chat here. Okay, let's move to the second part here. So we just did a review of the last week. I probably missed some things, but that was some highlights. And so the second here is facilitate conversations around pushing Epoch Island forward. So this is the part of the chat where we're going to start. When I say we, is in Moai Labs, we'll try to share some Steve would call these alpha alerts, but just like little things that aren't public or haven't been shared, but we're working on. I would also like to add in a disclaimer and preface, not everything we ever share here may ever come to life. And I think this is one of the biggest things we've made a mistake in the past is like we like to share and we like to overshare what we're working on. We like to document what we're doing. However, that doesn't mean that it's like that it might not be a priority in a day from now. It might not have the funding to keep doing it. We might lose a front-end developer, like a million things that can make this not actually happen. So we're going to be sharing things that are like we pretty confidently think will come into play, and then some things that may or may not. So this one is probably a very confidently should happen. It's already pretty much built out by Ben, who I think is on the call, our Ninja front-end developer. But we realized that if you guys are like me, I've had to go to a million websites to look up like my Epoch stats. I've been on like DBank, I've been on Balancer. So we're trying to create like a unified stats analytics page for you guys to see all your Epoch, your VPOC, and some other information as well. In the chats, if there's more information that you'd like to see on the stats page that's not there, we're trying to compile that. So please let that be known in the chat what you would like to see. Let's keep going. So I feel one of the things that we're working on as Moai Labs is I feel like we have a really fun future vision, 2030, really far in the future. What our biggest gap, in our opinion, is right now is like, what's the first step? What's the first and second step? Because the network state feels very intangible and big right now. So we're putting a lot of effort into some articles right now that I think will connect some dots. So expect these in the coming days and weeks. This one is more of a thought leadership type article, but it's important for us, which is like, what are the ways network states can generate revenue? This is, a topic that I haven't personally seen, and it's so the goal here was basically look at all the ways countries currently make money and generate revenue, figuring out which one of those are relevant to network states, and then draw the parallel for which ones are most likely Epoch Island can use. And what's really cool with this framework is any network state can read this article and kind of a la carte, oh, we'll choose this one and this one and this one. These make sense to us. So it's really fun. And it was a really good thought exercise in helping us come to a semi-conclusion on what we think the first next best revenue stream is for us, which is we'll talk about some passports here in a second. Also, we're writing a letter to the Islanders. For those of you that have followed Jeff Bezos' letters to the shareholders or Warren Buffett's letters to Berkshire Hathaway, obviously we are not to the level of those people in terms of writing, but the same goal applies, which is once a year, maybe a few times a year, create that uniting article or a few pages that just share the vision and just get everybody on the same page. So that's another article that we're working on. And then the passport. So this one, we're going to talk about it a little on the call here today, but scaling and sustaining network state passports will be a really interesting article that will go into detail. So let's go to passports real quick. Where are we with time, by the way? Somebody have the time. We are 10:37. Okay. So some of you might have seen this tweet that we teased on and without a lot of context. And so this right now on the call will be the most we've ever gone into detail on like how we're thinking about passports. Again, a disclaimer, these are not finalized. These haven't even been proposed. We just, Moai Labs, feel we'd like to craft out the vision to present something to the elders and the Islanders to really tear apart so that we can make it better and then make a proposal that actually passes. So rather going through these like multiple proposal phases, we want to really shine this up a bit. So, but during this call today, I did want to give some general vision for the passports. So the passports have three main goals. Increase our population through streamlining the onboarding flow. So right now, the onboarding flow, you have to have a crypto wallet. You have to go to the website. You have to connect your wallet. You make sure you have ETH on that wallet. You have to buy Epoch, which has some gas. You have to add liquidity, and then you have to lock it. Like, just think about all the things there. And if our onboarding flow can be improved, we think that we can get this down into less than 1 minute, and so easy that your grandma could do it. So that's kind of like our vision here, and increasing, and we think the passports can help with that a lot. Increase revenue. So revenue is our big 2024 goal, and not just revenue, but we'd love to have. I have to pause here. Reoccurring and recurring. I've researched a few times the difference. I think recurring is the correct terminology here. Revenue for Epoch Island, and then last but not least, increase the Epoch the Epoch value through Islander owned liquidity, which we'll go to and we'll talk through here in a second. So this is an example of the potential onboarding flow. So right now you go to the website, then you go to the dApp, then you connect your wallet. What we're experimenting right now with, which we haven't seen, maybe you guys in the chat can share with me another project that's done this, but we're calling it basically a contactless onboarding flow. What I mean by that, or excuse me, a connectless onboarding flow. Connectless. And what I mean by that is without having to connect a wallet or do anything like that, imagine if you could simply get a passport by sending some ETH and receiving a passport in return. So you don't have to worry about signing messages, spending gas fees, or anything like that. Send, receive, boom. So this is an example of if the landing page looked like this, really making the passports the front and center. And it says here, enter your ETH address to reserve an Epoch Island passport and own a piece of the world's first potential network state. On the bottom left, it also, like, if you have questions, come into Discord and we can help you answer those. And then it shows here only 75 passports remaining at 0.1 ETH. So the idea here would be that the Islanders control the scarcity and the price of these. So whenever we want to increase population, we can increase the passports and vice versa. So an actual visual of like what this could look like from a dApp could, again, this is all potential. You could name your passport. So kind of like ENS has a name, you could reserve, Brian or Ninchi or whatever it is as your passport name. And then you choose the number of passports you want, the years you would like to reserve them. We're currently experimenting with about a 10-year max lockup, and then our 10-year max reserve, and then like a discount code. So this is where a really fun on-chain referral system could come into play if we wanted to do that. And then you reserve it. So all of the information. And then, by the way, I'm happy to answer questions at anytime now if anybody would like to have about these. But the passports, just to show with you potential revenue. This is this is not to show projections. This is to show potential outcomes to make sure that what we're building actually has the ceiling to sustain Epoch Island. So you'll see here the price of passport on the left, and then the amount of population that we have. Now we might figure out in the long run we would like to have a small population of like really high like value passports, or maybe we go for scale. But this will really be the balancing act of inclusivity versus exclusivity, and that one we'll have to figure out as well. Willie, go ahead.
Thanks, Zach. Wondering if these passports are NFTs or if they represent Epoch in some way.
Yeah, so getting back to these, so that's ultimately up for us to decide and discuss. So I can only share our personal views. So I'll answer the first one. We do definitely believe that these should be NFTs that are on chain. That the end game was they would actually represent your citizenship of the country of Epoch Island. Like that's the far. So you're more need to think about, okay, what is it until that actually becomes a thing? So until then, there's all of these potential utilities. So this could be access, are the 5 categories here. Could be access to the Discord channel, could be access to co-working spaces like Willie. That's what I was actually I texted you about, having a connection to Keiretsu, be like, what can we do to get Islanders access to Keiretsu? Like stuff like that. Co-living spaces, events, stuff like that. Influence, imagine if you got a passport, immediately you could vote in some type of way on things. You don't have to get Epoch. Um, Ownership means, we'll talk about this later, but basically you can void your Epoch passport and redeem its underlying value of the treasury. So if you own 1% of the passports, you could redeem for 1% of all the treasury. Swag would be shirts and stuff, and then yield would be like trading fees. Now, I see Steve has his hand up, but I think the one last thing maybe I'll say, and then maybe Steve, this is what you're going to pipe in at. What we're thinking about from a tokenomics perspective, Willie, is say it's 1 ETH for a passport. 1 ETH is immediately goes to Balancer's 80/20 pool. So your 1 ETH is basically now representing 80% Epoch and 1% ETH that you kind of have ownership of because you can void it to redeem from that. So what's really cool here is you might have already connected the dots, but that would mean 80% buy pressure on the Epoch token with the 1 ETH. And so you're basically creating a liquidity position by buying a passport. Does that help connect the dots?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. And it reminds me a lot kind of ATX DAO's model, which we've got Mason on the call. But ATX DAO also has basically had a series of what they call cohorts, where they've sold NFT memberships for about 1 ETH each. And then each of those NFT memberships gives you access, influence, ownership, swag, all those things you named. But I like that instead of just going to the treasury, it goes to a liquidity pool, and the treasury has the native currency Epoch. Another thing it reminds me of a little bit is nouns, the nouns model. And one thing we're working on at ATX DAO right now is moving away from this cohort model to ongoing auctions, or at least experimenting with a fork of the nouns contract and the first dynamic auction algorithm. So instead of just like one membership every day forever, we're basically right now tweaking the auction contract so that the issuance actually fluctuates based on supply and demand. And the community can basically set a target price per passport or per membership. And if demand's higher, and if the memberships are selling for above that target price, then the auction duration will decrease, and we'll let more members in until the price goes below that target price, and then the auction duration increases. We let fewer members in. So yeah, we're working on it right now, and we'll be experimenting with it. Hopefully this spring, we're going to be launching the dynamic auction algorithm. So if it works out, this could be a great way. Basically, I think it makes sense to kind of start with cohorts, and then potentially we could look at deploying this dynamic auction algorithm, which it seems like would work really well with this.
I love it. Well, just a quick shout out to ATX DAO. Hopefully the ATX Downs proposal you guys made, I'd love to get an update on that sometime. But I think ATX DAO and the mechanisms created has, well, ahead of its time for sure, and what you guys have been up to, and would love to revisit all the things that you guys have learned so that we don't make the same mistakes. You know what I mean? And that's awesome. Yeah, I'd love to see. I think the dynamic nature of what you're talking about makes a lot of sense. You know, I'm not sure if it's a bonding curves type of thing, but really interesting. By the way, Mason, I see Steve and Chris are patient, but Mason, I see you raised your hand. Did he drop? He might have dropped for a second. And just because it's related to ATX stuff, kind of, did you have something you want to say?
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to say is like, so if we're building, so Epoch Island and ATX DAO have a lot of similarities like you talked about, but Epoch Island has an edge in certain ways, and that it has a potentially global scale. So depending on the amount of leverage we can generate by increasing our membership base, there's a lot of interesting partnership opportunities, and that's kind of where the value is going to get accrued to the passport from my perspective. And there's it depends on really what type of momentum we can get, but if we can get to the point where we have so many people in our organization in so many different areas, we can establish kind of partnerships with for example, the Network State Conference, right? Like something that Willie and I have talked about many times is if there was a world in which ATX DAO's model, or just the idea of making city DAOs could be propagated nationally and globally, then you can have some type of conference that you do, and the conference is a tried and true revenue stream. So the conference or the event is like a really, really classic thing to think about. And ATX DAO has found success in like the perks and the events. And I think that's something that a lot of crypto in general has seen success with, just like outside of an online or a digital offering. And then yeah, so that's just like my like context there. And then we can talk again about like failures ATX DAO has had. And I'll pass it off to other people. But the one last thing is like, if we could get a physical passport, that'd be very cool. But
I love that, Mason. Yeah, it was fun when we chatted in Austin, and kind of the ability to franchise it. Like you created one that works really well, franchise it to different cities, and without even using the term network state, that's essentially what you're creating, making it work really, really well once locally and expanding. So I think there is lots of things to be done there.
If we could like also, as network state projects appear, if there were ways to like automatically or like just kind of onboard them through like passive or like quick, I guess like airdrops for example, or whatever, but get yeah, exactly. State in the box. Yeah. If anybody that wants to do network state, if we could just immediately make them an Epoch citizen in some way through a partnership agreement or something, that just like, it's like a rising tide situation. That makes Epoch Island the most credible theoretically, if we can collaborate. And like, obviously you've done a good job at like being a first mover. And so we have that advantage right now, which is really cool. But yeah, again, there's people with their hands raised. So I'm just
my last note, and then we will get to you, Steve and Chris, I promise. My last note for that is it was a good inspiration is Links DAO. I went and looked up like the perks, and it was like I saw that they had a partnership with Top Golf. So like little things like that, where if you get this, you get all these other things. And it's like a 1 + 1 = 3 kind of environment. So I completely agree with that. All right, I think Steve was up next. Steve, did I miss anything on
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
I wanted to step back a little bit and look at the total population. Someone asked, how does population go down? And you hinted on this a little bit about burning the passports, but I think you can dive a little further into the value aspect of burning a passport.
Are you talking about like the voidingness of it, or
Yes.
yeah, so there's two ways that it could probably be coded. And this is all up for discussion and debate, but either you could have a function in the smart contract that allows you to, we could basically banish people from Epoch Island. And if they're getting out of line, just like a citizen needs to be deported from the country. Now, you would have in the smart contract where if you do that, it just basically auto voids their passport, but they get paid the underlying value. It's not like we're stealing their money. It's just that you get like, all right, we're going to exit you, we're going to zero you out, but then you get all the money that was on your passport. So there's that is a way that the population could be decreased, is like you cut the 10% of people that are not adding value. And again, not stealing any money, just they no longer have the benefits. Or a person could opt into voiding their passport. And essentially what the voiding of the passport means is, Steve, maybe this is the weeds, like what you're trying to refer, we've been thinking about is like the amount of years that you have reserved times the amount of passports you have will give you like a weighting system to know your ownership of the treasury. So if our treasury gets up to $1 billion, and then you can increase your ownership of that treasury by having more passports or reserving for more time. So we don't really know if that's a linear scale, like that's really big debates. Well, and the other way that the population could go down is somebody just not renewing their passport. Steve, I forget where we ended with. If somebody doesn't renew it, we've been exploring like auctions and other things. Steve, did you want to add an angle there?
Yeah, this is like very recent. We've been talking about this just in the last few days. So you can look at this a lot like how domain name renewals work. It's kind of our inspiration, right? So if you haven't renewed your passport, then there's a grace period. And if you don't renew within the grace period, it goes up for auction. And if the auction ends and no one buys it, what happens? So we're looking at the potential of that means someone could void the passport, but the value stays in the burn pile, basically making all the other passports worth a little more, is what we're looking at right now.
Yeah. Thanks for the reminder there. Steve, I want to get to Chris, but was there anything else in PAX?
That was it. You can keep going.
Okay. Okay, cool. Chris, I think you were next.
Yeah, so I think from my side, and it kind of follows on quite nicely from what Steve was saying about the expirations. We need to be careful, and I think it might just be the connotations of using the word passport. And especially when we talk about passports and then removing people if they, misbehave or phrase it however we like. There's my brain makes the jump between all of those connotations and China and social credit scores. And every part of that makes me go, ooh, hold on. And we need to think a bit more carefully about these passports, that we're not linking identity of an individual with the identity of their financial transactions. The fact that it's on chain means those two things are always going to be linked somehow. We need to make sure that the decision-making process for each is still separated. And I know we're way ahead of ourselves with this when I start saying this. It's just
no, I'm glad your brain there, and I actually think a lot of what you're saying now is really relevant to the note that I had here that we're going to get to about PAX that you had made about like once you start combining financials with governance and intermingling the two, it can lead to unintended consequences of these that can get kind of hairy. So I want to say I personally believe, and I wrote this in the letters to the 2024 letters, is our governance system that we have in place may or may not be the end best solution. I think the governance system we have in place is the mechanism we use to figure out what that is in whatever capacity that is, and we get to decide. So just want to mention with you, it's the chances that you get everything right on first smart contract deployment of creating a network state is like pretty low. So we will need to kind of be adaptive over time to recognizing these. Pax, I see you lowered your hand. Did you still have something you wanted to mention?
Well, basically, Zach, you made a point, which I would just briefly maybe expand, and that is, it's not just the basic idea of governance in the sense that there have been sort of governance attacks that we might want to defend against. Oh, this is known territory. There might be some governance vectors that we can implement, but the main and most important question, for me at least, that differentiates Epoch Island from a lot of other projects that have been started in this space is, if this is a country, then what does it mean to be a part of this country? What does it mean to be a citizen? And I don't think this can just be, oh, just put some money in a pile, because there will always be better ways to put money in a pile, in some sense, and not turn Epoch Island into a glorified sort of investment fund. Yeah, exactly, core values. And more than just that, it's basically the idea that if you're a citizen of a country, you have certain rights and you have certain responsibilities. And this cannot just simply be coded into a smart contract and be viewed as, oh, you just contribute to a treasury, and then this treasury, you can vote on it and it does stuff. So this is something that I think is our most noble goal to solve. It's something that we need to try and succeed at in order for network states to become real. A network state for me is not just a DAO buying a piece of land and then saying we are a country. It will not fulfill any kind of change that's meaningful. And in that sense, the only thing that's remaining is the narrative. Right now, the idea of network states is cool, but then again, a few years ago, everything was a DAO, and everybody was hyping up DAOs as the most amazing thing ever. So I think, and I don't have all the answers, obviously, otherwise I would just write them all out, but the most important thing for us to figure out is, A, what do these passports mean? If you could just buy them, that's cool. But what do they mean? What kind of rights do they give you, and what kind of responsibilities do you have towards this sort of shared project?
Yeah.
And if we come from that point, then we can also decide, well, if we understand our charter, we understand our constitution, if we understand our social contract, then we can figure out the smart contracts as well. There's some very obvious ways to do this. You can have passports be NFTs, you can have them be share of the treasury, you can have them be voided, you can have them be auctioned off and everything. If you treat them like commodities, if you treat them like securities instruments, whatever, shares of treasuries, profit shares, all of these things have been tried. Some of them can be a little bit innovated upon, but what you end up in the end is, ungoverned, hedge fund, or something like that.
Yeah.
Or something that can be pirated by treasury readers. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, PAX. I think there's lots of fun things to talk about. I think what you're saying is if we don't figure that out, nothing else matters. So I 100% agree with you. I actually was listening to a podcast recently. Think of what you want of him, but Tucker Carlson was asked, like, what's the number one problem with the United States? And he referenced social cohesion. It is having a unified belief in who you are, what you're about, what you don't believe in as well. And I think Balaji notes that very well, that there needs to be some united value system. And so this is also part in the articles we're working on, is whether we call it the bylaws or the charter or the covenant, whatever we call it, like, you can just sign a transaction, cool, but on chain, but what does that actually mean when it comes to fruition, and pragmatically, what does it actually mean? Pax, my biggest takeaway from what you said that really resonated with me is there's two ways to look at it. What are your rights, which is what we think about, and then what are your responsibilities? And I think we really need to focus on that second one, which is, what am I responsible for? And having that in writing. And I think one of my favorite things about this passport system is, right now you can just go buy VPOC, but the passport system is a new opportunity for us to redefine, reclarify, so that when somebody buys it, they know what they're buying into and what the rules of this new world are. So Pax, thanks for jumping in there. Did you have anything else you wanted to clarify, or things that I might have said that you agree or disagree with?
No. I think I don't want to monopolize any more of this call's time. I think that's our number one sort of goal, and the biggest problem will be the responsibilities. Everybody likes to just buy and coast, so it's the easiest part you can do is just buy a bunch of tokens, and then say GM in the Discord, and then you're participating. The biggest problem will be defining responsibilities. That might be some kind of value add that people do, or down the line, some kind of tax might also be necessary for running the operations of this system. It's something that we need to slowly start discussing and slowly start defining. That's the only thing that's important for me, because it also will shape my interest in my participation. I think a lot of others, just to understand where is this ship sailing to. We have this very broad idea. It's a network state. A lot of people don't understand what that means, other than cool,
Yeah.
It's a tagline, but it's something that we should focus on defining, and then messaging once as we define it.
Sure.
That's just the way I see it right now.
Agreed. Steve, if you can create a breakout meeting around that. We've come up with 2 or 3 breakout meetings from here that I would love to make sure we get the time for that. So Pax, that was great. I love it. I'm gonna keep pushing forward here, and Pax, please keep pushing that frontier forward. It is super important. This was just a fun. So right now, I think one thing I'm obsessing about lately is onboarding experience, and not just about getting your passport, but from the moment that somebody hears about Epoch Island to the moment they think about getting a passport to after when they get their passport. Basically, right now we have a task list of becoming an Islander, but that's not what an onboarding experience should be. It should not be a task list of things you check off. It should be an experience of something that you feel. And so this is only one small part of it, but I would love nothing more than when somebody gets a passport, imagine 2 days later you get a box on your door and it has like a Epoch box and it has, shirts and stickers and swag and whatever it is. And it really makes you feel like you're part of something. And then, 6 months down the line, you see this still hanging out in the back of your house or something, and it makes you remember Epoch Island. So just creating that we will right now, I don't think people really feel like islanders. Like I feel like I'm Ethereum, I feel like is my identity, but how do we do that it's going to take time, but we need to start reinforcing these things. And swag is a very small part of that, but it is something fun to think about. Okay. So there were some topics that were brought up. Pax, I think we touched on, maybe it's different, but because I think Muzu, are you still here? No, you have a kid. Muzu, is he still?
I'm here. Yep.
Okay, cool. I'd love to push you up to the top of the list. So your overall comment on Discord was about real world assets and partnerships. Did you want to, I actually have the text pulled up if it helps. I could just read it, but I think it'd be better if you just like expanded on your thoughts here and what you wanted to discuss.
Sure. Yeah. It's a little broad, a little loose. So I'm not sure how coherent it is. I guess it's just something that's been on my mind after reading a little bit about Theopetra Labs. If anyone hasn't seen or heard of them yet, they're another network state kind of platform or group of people. And they're fairly small, similar to Epic or Epoch Labs.
We should debate the how it's said, by the way, another time.
Yeah, sure. But they're working to buy land and housing as kind of a first step. That's their angle right now. That's kind of how they're advertising themselves. And I'm not quite sure how I feel about that as a first step, although there's some persuasive arguments that I've read around that. I'm just curious what the Moai Labs team thinks about that and how that maybe relates to Epoch Island. And then everybody else, the elders as well, maybe have some ideas on that. But more to the point, my reason for thinking of that and kind of asking this was, as time goes on, I think we're going to start seeing a lot more network state platforms and projects crop up. Some more legitimate than others, but upon identifying some truly kind of legitimate attempts, off the top of my head, I would say that the DGods team, which if anybody else missed that, DGods team, NFT, PFP team, so to speak, is looking into the network state orientation. And that would definitely be considered legitimate in my mind. So again, without rambling too long, I wonder how we can partner and network. I think part of a network state is not only being networked individually, the citizens, but also as kind of a network within and without other states, network states. I kind of envision a possible, unification, a kind of united network states of sort. Though, we're in kind of uncharted territory here, and it's hard to say where a lot of this may end up. But yeah, so that's kind of what I was thinking.
Muzus. By the way, am I saying that right? Muzos.
Yeah, in my mind, I rarely say it out loud, but I guess I would prefer. I know you've asked it before. I guess I would prefer, or in my
Moses.
mind, I would say Mozus.
Moses. Okay. Got
Yeah.
it. So I see Steve raise his hand. Steve, I think I'm gonna touch on what you Steve, you and I have the connection of so I'll jump in and let me know if it's on the right direction. So there's two primary things there, Moses, that land and real world assets. Like how do we think about that relative to like timeline priorities? And then two, how do we think of general partnerships in the greater thing of network states? So starting with the land, I think is really interesting. Like on our current pathway, it's near the end of priorities. But I will say recently, I'm writing an article right now, and in that research, I think there is something powerful, as you mentioned, that the acquisition of the land early gives, and I'm not saying this is better or worse, but it gives a tangible, visible thing that somebody's like, oh, that's what we're going to do. We're going to get money and then we're going to go buy this land. Now, they don't think about the after. Their uncertainty is what to do after. Our uncertainty is what to do before the land. For example, there's two things that I have in this article that are case studies. Links DAO, we're going to buy a golf course. It was like what they did. It was very straightforward. It like clicked. And Epoch Island is very ambiguous. It's one of our downsides. It's one of our weaknesses, in my opinion. It's so broad that land is tangible and physical. I get it. So I do think even if it's acquiring a local co-working space could be an important tangible thing that you could do. It doesn't have to be an actual $160 million island, which we have looked at a few of those for fun. The second case study is, okay, look at Constitution DAO. They raised, does anybody have any guesses on how much they raised? Like, does anyone remember? I feel like Willie has an
Something
idea.
ridiculous, like 40 million.
Yeah, it was like 40, 46, 40 to 50 million. And how are we trying to build this country struggling to have a fraction of fundraising that Constitution DAO? And the ingredients of that to me were it was simple to understand, real, like it was like I put money in, we're going to buy the Constitution DAO. And it was easy to give them money. And I guess the fourth one, they wanted to be part of history. Like those combination of ingredients like made that just like fire. And so if you can simplify and make something tangible. So I just want to mention land on my personal priority list. It's like I wouldn't even know what to do with the land that we bought. And like I was even actually last night looking at there's a million different ways to look at it. You can think of land, but you could also buy there's private islands that have resorts on them, meaning there's already like a profit revenue generating, like you can buy something that is revenue generating rather than just like a plot of land that's not doing anything for you. You know what I mean? You can try to go buy a skyscraper and now you have like a co-working thing. So there's like so many ways to look at it. It's just so intimidating to even think about it right now. That's why it's personally, speaking for myself, like just intimidating. But other people, as we recruit new elders and islanders, probably have a much better idea of land and what that could look like. And hopefully a lot of these things I just said will be more articulated in the article. Steve, and I'll get to the partnership. So Steve he was actually messaging on Slack early this week about there's this one partnership that Steve is really interested in. Steve, I want you to share that. But before I do, I want to give a more broad answer to you, Moses, about the partnerships. I think you make a great point that while all the network states individually will have their own ethos and principles and values, that doesn't mean they can't all be loosely interconnected in some way. And so I think what there's a really good opportunity for Epoch Island is creating the essential directory of your entry point into network states. I realize how hard, like think about how hard it is right now to go find all the people doing network states. It's like chaos. It's like CoinMarketCap before it was CoinMarketCap. It was just like, go find your crypto. So we've been exploring using the escapetheregime.com as a potential, it's not all about Epoch Island. Epoch Island is part of it, where you can go there and see what all the ATX DAO is doing and Cabin is doing and like all these other ones and what their take on network states are. And so basically creating the conversation and the directory and the ecosystem for people to promote their own network state attempts. So Steve had another partnership idea. Steve, is that why you raised your hand about the land?
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah. So I'll ramble here for a minute. I've typed some notes. So the Theopter Labs you mentioned is, of all the network state projects I've come across doing some research, is the only one that I feel like has a chance of succeeding outside of Epoch Labs so far, just from the ones that are trying to make this happen, right? So good job bringing them up. They've actually reached out to us. We're in the process of getting a meeting with them to figure out what type of partnership opportunities we could potentially have with them. And I've looked into how they've, structured it. I think they've got 5 acres of land, which isn't a lot. I guess you got to start somewhere. And I think 20 subscribers. They have an interesting way they're going about it, but they're, like Dash said, they're definitely land first. I don't get the impression though that they're as concerned from the legal side or the country as a service side. I don't feel like that's their goal. I think they're more interested on the land side. Just my perspective. I probably need to do some more research to them. But that brings up another point where I kind of feel like what Epoch Island is way more focused on we are very clear we are making a new country. How we get there, like the pathway, we think we've outlined what those steps are. Land is a consequence, it's a byproduct of it's a partial requirement to make the country exist. So the partnership opportunity that I potentially see, this is just me kind of brainstorming this week, is what if the partnership we had with other projects was let them focus a little bit more on the land side of things and let us focus a bit more on the legal and country side of things. That might speed up the success of both projects potentially. So yeah, anyway, good job bringing them up.
Yeah, Steve, I guess just the one sentence you said there was like Epoch Island could more be the index of this network states and representing ownership
that
and
too,
getting ownership in all of the network states. Because if we believe in network states, we should want to support them and own portions of them so that we grow together. So I think that was a point that you had made, Steve, on Slack. Moses, any final comments or words there about some of the thoughts?
Yeah, I think that kind of, a successful network state in the future will be something like, say an organism, or you've got one arm, Theopatra Labs, working on the land side of it. You got another arm working on what have you. And then, you've got, let's say, Epoch Island, the brain indexing. Yeah, but I think it's real important that we try hard for kind of alliedship or a unified front, because as Liberland showed, we talked about that a little bit yesterday in the Discord. We're going up against the incumbent nation state indoctrinated sort of ideation of what a nation can be, and that's going to be tough. It will require a unified front, I think. Sure. is what I'm thinking. But yeah, well, this is exciting nonetheless.
Yeah, well, thanks again. It was a toss-up of Islander of the Week between you and Nenshi. So Moses, I know you've been around for a long time, and thank you for always being supportive in the Discord. If you don't mind, so Pax, I know you mentioned there was some time earlier that we went into some detail on what you had for your topic. Did you still feel there was some discussion here that was not untapped here, or anything you'd like to share?
Okay, so we did discuss a majority of what I wanted to talk about here, but let's just very quickly talk about my experience with Liberland, because I'm gonna like semi-dox myself. I'm from Serbia. and Liberland is like right over there. I know people who were involved intimately in its creation. They kind of have like a yearly party where a bunch of like ANCAP people go on a boat and hang out and pretend that Liberland is important. And I think that's the crux of the argument. And it also ties into the Constitution DAO story and everything else, which is basically, unfortunately, because of the way that nations and countries are structured, you have to offer something to people so they can say, well, if I join Epoch Island, why is this good for me? Is it because Epoch is going to moon? Because is it because you have to get something out of it? And I think the biggest problem with Liberland is that it kind of very much overly focused on the fact that it's a country, it was sort of self-important in that stance that just because it is a country, just because the president guy was very smart and kind of figured out this kind of loophole where he found some land that doesn't belong to anyone and just pretended that it was his or a country, that doesn't cut it. It doesn't really mean anything. And the fact that if we want this story to grow, then the network states needs to mean something. It needs to give people something in the short term, and it needs to have a vision in the long term. And I think that is something that we need to focus right now. First one is, what is our short-term goal? Is it trying to get as many people to buy into the ITO? Is it trying to sell as many passports? Is it trying to generate some kind of revenue quickly? That's the question number one. The second question, again, following up, is since we will have these growing pains, how do we decide? Is it just like a full-blown plutocracy? Do people just join in and so on and so forth? So basically, that's what I wanted to follow up on. Don't fall into the Liberland trap just because you say you're a country. That doesn't mean anything. It doesn't provide anything to people. People are disillusioned with countries already. They're disillusioned with the country they've been born with, and that their ancestor probably fought in a war to make sure it is a country. So having a pop-up country doesn't really mean anything unless you can clearly define what value it brings to people. Now, it can be something like for example, what a country does is it helps you incorporate. That's what Liberland tried to do. Their promise, the first valuable promise, was basically, okay, so we can pretend that we're a country, and you might be able to, incorporate your business in Liberland, and it actually means something to somebody. And maybe we can do something like that, though under the guise of another country. I'm rambling, but this is my final point. The only way to succeed is basically to not go against the grain from the start. The fact that you delineate yourself as a country, basically in some places will be met with scorn and disdain. In other places, you could get you into trouble. The only reason Liberland kind of even existed was because there's some trolling border dispute between Serbia and Croatia didn't allow Liberland people to come in, and Serbian border guards were like, yeah, whatever, we're just trolling the Croatians because we have like a 500-year-old feud with them nationally. So try and figure out a direct way that people can benefit from Epoch Island, and that's ideally through some kind of narrative trappings of what a country can do, whether it's allowing to incorporate business, allowing people to buy land or subdivisions of land, allowing people to buy actual shares in a business. I think one of the best approaches would be something with real world assets and so on and so forth. But this is what I can comment on so far. So once again, thank you for your time. I've been talking for quite a bit. So yeah.
No, Pax. Thank you for always bringing it back to. There's so many threads we could pull on there. The one thing you said of many that stood out the most, though, value. If we don't create value in the world, nothing else really matters. It's at this point in time, it's a vanity tagline and label of a country if you don't do anything. And I like to think of like Bitcoin, where if your goal is just to create another currency, cool. But if your actual goal is to create a currency that allowed people a better option than the currencies they currently hold, that's a whole nother conversation. And I think that's what you're alluding to here. So, Pax, I'm really excited to get feedback on. Guys, I keep referencing articles, and I apologize for that, but just where it outlines what are all the value adds that we can actually have. Is that tax benefits? Is that incorporation status? Which actually, quick anecdotal story, me, Steve, and Umar spent 6 months trying to figure out where we should incorporate our development agency, talking to lawyers. Then it still is a tedious process, many, many thousands of dollars. Imagine in 2 clicks on a MetaMask or whatever wallet you use, you could incorporate in a country that it actually recognized you. Like there's that benefit. There is freedoms that you don't get other places. There's like so many things, but taking a time to really outline, and my personal goal for the next quarter, meet with people like you, all the Islanders I can, all the elders, have one-on-one meetings. What do you like about your current country? What do you not like? What would you actually be willing to, what value could another country provide you that would be greater than what you have now? So we can start mapping that out. And so circling it all back, Pax, value, value, value. If we don't do that, nothing else really matters. So I know we have some, so I will, so I know a lot of you guys joined as well, wanting to do the introductions. I hope that we get the time to do that. Just so you guys, if not, there was so much value added by so many people on the call today. Like we will make sure people are taken care of with some Epoch tokens. So just wanted to mention that it might be in some people's brains. But Ninchi, you've been patient. Did you want to add something there?
Yeah, okay, I shared just a few thoughts of mine, chat directly, but I would just like to bring back this particular Anon project for the ITO. What would be in it for us? So we are permissioners. They could, if they wanted, like kind of fork the whole window and just make it their own. But if we are going to be the host of that particular event, when they will be raising the capital, what's in it for us, or for the treasury, or for the island as such? So
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. So the ITO protocol has a built-in protocol fee that can be turned on by the Islanders. So for example, imagine if a company raises $5 million and we have a 1% fee in there, or whatever it is, 5% fee, you could do the math, and then that money would go to the Epoch Island Treasury. So we can then decide how to use that money for putting it into liquidity, which adds buy pressure to the token and sustainability. We can use it to actually buy, rocket pool our ETH so that we can have sustainable yield coming in. We get to decide that. But short end is there's a protocol fee, just like Uniswap has a protocol fee that's not turned on. We can turn it on. My last note on that, in my conversation yesterday with the founder of the project looking to maybe do an ITO, he suggested maybe instead of a protocol fee, that's like a fixed protocol fee, having it instead to be like a revenue share. So meaning the fee is only taken if they make money. So there's pros and cons to that, but that was another suggested way that we could theoretically code it. So hopefully that answered your question. Yeah, Mozu's trying to keep as much momentum here as it was there. Do you have a quick comment or something, or a more longer one that needs a breakout meeting?
Yeah, no, just I'll be real quick. Going to the value add of Epoch Island in both short and long term. I forgot about this, and nobody's mentioned it yet. I think this is like boom, maybe it is the quote unquote protection, legal protection, and possibly otherwise something like immigration for devs that are being harassed by incumbent regimes and whatnot. Epoch Island can protect you legally and or through a physical helping through physical immigration. So I'll leave it at that. I think that's something that hasn't been mentioned and needs to be kept in mind.
I love that. I think it's unfortunate that I forgot to bring that up, because Steve would know, and Umar, that was the first thing I was yelling from the fences, that it is very complicated, and like we can't like if somebody's still living in a country and gets whatever, like we can't fully protect people like yet, but we can do things now, including saying anybody who is we feel is unjustifiably prosecuted, like say the founders of Pool Together. I don't think that they should have ever been prosecuted for what they were doing. If Epoch Island could say, if we ever see this and we know that these people are part of Epoch Island, they have a passport, we will mint up to 1% of our supply to cover their legal expenses. So it could start with a financial umbrella protection of like, here's some capital to fight back. And then down the line, once we have a real physical location, it could expand. So there's a spectrum there, and I'm not a lawyer, so I hate talking about that kind of stuff because probably many things that I don't know about. So the last major discussion point that we had, and then in the future weeks, guys, on Discord, on Telegram, please, document if it's a very nuanced discussion. This is the time that we want to do that. So throughout the weeks, I'm trying to be available on Discord. It's very hard with baby and life and juggling a lot of things. So having real discussions on this, keep those in your mind throughout the week and just write them down. The last one that Moai Labs, I guess, wanted to kind of present to the group here. So the ITO is currently filled out. Time will tell what happens with that in 7-8 days from now. But basically, I think it is a good to jumpstart. What does the next ITO wave look like? Should we adjust the duration of time? Should we have different tokens that are available? Should we start the protocol fee? Should the durations be staggered so they're starting at different dates? We have some thoughts on this, but I wanted to see if there's any non-Moai Labs members here that would make like gut feeling intuition about what you would change about the ITO for future rounds.
Well, I think maybe one obvious one to start with is just the size of the ITO. Like how much are we going to target raising? I can totally understand. It seemed like the first one was obviously relatively small compared to the demand that was there, which I think can make sense as the first ITO ever. So definitely an experiment, and makes sense to not make it huge. Although I don't know, the first DAO fundraiser was an experiment too. They raised quite a bit, but then of course we all know how that ended. But yeah, I guess I was wondering kind of what was the thought that went into how big to make the first wave. Has there been any thought into how big to make the next waves? And an obvious question is like, what is the target amount that we're raising? And obviously, like, what are we going to spend? What do we want to spend it on? What does the roadmap look like? And so I can see it being kind of like, you don't necessarily want to raise too much until we know exactly what it's needed for and what it's going to be spent on. But at the same time too, it seems like clearly, even with what we have right now, there's demand to participate, and can be some benefits of just getting a big, large war chest, even before we necessarily know exactly how we plan to deploy it all.
Yeah, lots of good points. I'll try to quickly give some thoughts to that and shoot over to you, Main McFly, after this. But just the duration chosen and the amount chosen had a few different reasons. One, I think it is hard to ignore that the ability to say that the ITO was sold out, take it as what it is, even if it's a small amount, has some benefits of marketing and psychology and momentum building of, rather than if we would have tried to do tons of tokens, it doesn't sell out. It kind of just doesn't feel that so now people are going to be waiting for the next one. So you wanted to build on top of that. And then second, I would say is a security and economic, like we did 5 audits, sure. But what was really cool with the amount that we had is even if all the money in a random crazy exploit happened, which we did not expect at all, we could cover it with our treasury by minting Epoch. Like theoretically, we could cover it. So it felt good to like it's like a soft launch, if you will, rather than millions of dollars flowing in. We can't even like fully like back that. So there was like a safe and secure feeling that knowing the money should be backed fully. And then for future, it's interesting. Like I was actually talking about this with the Moai Labs team. I think it would be helpful of having future like market caps at like 100 million and 200 million and 500 million just sitting there not that we think they're going to get filled, but it does two things. It adds a price anchor to psychologically that market cap will hopefully grow. And then two, on the off chance that it runs up, we're there ready to catch it. So hopefully that gives an idea. And I think the goal would be the higher market caps have longer duration. So we would like to see some 6 or 12 month. I'm not sure, but I don't know how to time the bull market, but probably in the next year or two, hopefully. So if you have some 12-month options with a 2% fee, I bet some people would take that. And that could be good. So Willie, does that help a little?
Yeah, I really love the thought you guys have put into it. Makes total sense, like why you designed the first one that way, or why we designed the first one that way. And I like how you guys, I like all the thoughts you just mentioned around how we would do these future ways as well. That all sounds great to me.
And thank you for saying we. That's my goal. By the end of this year, everybody's saying we. See, Pax was already doing it. Pax already hitting us with the we. Maine McFly, thanks for being patient. Give me some Back to the Future comments here.
For me, it was great to see that you could not only participate in the ITO with ETH on mainnet, but also with different assets on L2s. And I would like to see if in the future waves there would be more different L2s to participate in this, like base L2 maybe, or the loop ring layer 2. That's what I wanted to know, if there are any plans for this.
Yeah, it was tough to like figure out all the chains that we like. I think also on the table was looking at Polygon. There was a balancing act between we want to test on every new chain that we had. So the more chains we add, the longer it would take to get to the ITO. But 100%, I think our goal is to be everywhere that people want. Anywhere people want to give us money, we should be there willing to accept it. The loop ring one is interesting. In my small research, I'm not sure if it's EVM compatible. I could be wrong on that. So if the contracts are deployable, like hell yeah, let's do it. Because I know that we have a huge loop ring or a growing loop ring community around Byron who's been joining, and we'd love to capture that. So if it's deployable and it's not huge resources, we'd love to start accepting as many chains and tokens as we can.
Great, thanks.
Cool. Good question. All right, guys. Thanks for powering through. So that was the primary meat of the meeting. Future weeks might be a lot shorter. I think there was a lot to cover today because it was the first meeting and we were catching up a lot. But we do hope to, continue these in the future. I guess this is the time. I'm going to hang out here as long as I can to try to answer any questions I can, any comments you guys want to make, any introductions that you guys are willing to do. Do you have any plans to let projects put a short code or so into their own website? Short code. Interesting. Yeah, I think like the ability for projects like that reached out to us to whitelist and create a completely immersive experience for the ITO would be huge. It could even be a revenue generator for them. So yeah, that's probably down the line in terms of priorities for Moai Labs. But if somebody at Epoch Island wants to prioritize developing that would be amazing to see. So does anybody have any questions, comments, or would like to give a short introduction of themselves? By the way, the person I haven't been able to say hello, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Excuse Nameka? Did I do it correctly?
Yeah, you actually, tried very well, right? So it's pronounced Inna Emeka.
Inna Emeka.
Yeah, correct.
All right. What is the last name easier for me? So I don't.
Yeah, it should be Aja.
Aja.
Yeah,
All right. Can I call you Aja? Is that all right?
Yeah, that's
well, you're
that's
the one
perfectly
on
fine.
camera who I didn't get to say hello, and I don't recognize the name. Are you on Discord with us?
Yes, I'm on Discord right now with a pseudonym, so to speak, Stella.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining. It's nice to meet you. I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have any comments, or an introduction of yourself?
Okay, yeah, right. So I'm a brand strategist, and a visual identity, designer, right? So like in particular, when you talked about, meeting, certain stakeholders, yeah, to get ideas, right, of their current, pain points, right, around countries, I felt, that was actually, something very, very important, right? Because, when we have so much data that is able to like, provide lots of insights, right? So like data from like individuals, we're going to be working with, and data, we also research, right? So like I really appreciated that, right? So I believe, in coming days, I hope to I'm getting, much more involved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love it. Do you mind if and feel free to skip this, but some of the questions I had just to get to know people, I like to phrase it like this. What country are you coming to us today representing? Um, I don't like to say where you're from because I don't want to dox you, but what country would you like to represent today?
That would be my country, Nigeria.
Nigeria? Okay.
Yes, correct.
And how did you hear about Epoch Island?
Like I think it must have been a KOL, an influencer, like, talking about Epoch like Island on Twitter, definitely on Twitter. Yeah.
Got it. My last question for you, this was a random one. What's the first job you ever had?
The first job I ever had, right? That was an help desk technician. Yeah.
Oh, a
So
technician.
like, can I join with my mobile, right? My laptop is currently at 1%, right? I'm currently in the waiting room with my mobile. Like, I would
Okay.
love to
Yeah,
join
yeah.
there.
Yeah, jump for it. That's fine. Would anybody else like we're coming up on the end here. I have no more Mozus. What's up, bud?
Yeah, just one thing I wanted to quickly add was the quote. We've all heard it, I'm sure, in some capacity, from a woman in the 40s or 50s. And I've just kind of been reading up about her, and I have all the more respect now, learning a little bit about her. Um, she was very forward thinking. She was in the 40s and 50s was a part of talks related around science, but also cybernetics, quote unquote, cybernetics back then. So she was on point there. But so the quote is, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. And I think that's fitting and pretty awesome.
Giving me some goosebumps over here. Not that I needed any more um, motivation, but I love that. It's interesting. I've heard that and I've never known the source, so it's interesting to hear the background. But I think that's so fitting. You guys might have seen the video on YouTube. Some guy's randomly at like a festival and he just gets up and he starts dancing and he just like just leaving it all out on the line, just going crazy. He's the only one doing it. And then like one other little person joins them. And then there's two crazy people that are just like, and everybody's like, look at those weird people over there. And then over the course of the next minute or two, everybody at the festival like joins in and is like dancing. And I think, in my opinion, startups and projects and attempts to do crazy stuff is a lot like that, where, for months you can just feel like you're dancing. And so I just wanted to take the time to everybody on this call right now. I feel like you guys are on the early 1% of the bell curve of craziness, which is very much needed and appreciated. And now the goal is just to get everybody else to kind of join the dance party with us. So I love that. I like the wording there, Moses, of thoughtful is a big part. And hopefully in the coming weeks, I'd love to really line out the DNA of what Epoch Island is. Moai Labs, our DNA is so clear to me. Steve and Umar, like we like to do experimental. We like to have empathy towards each other. We love to think of bad ideas. So kind of contrarian thinking, like Moai Labs DNA is so clear, but it's going to be fun to collectively think about what is Epoch Islands as we grow. Love that, Moses. Anybody else, question, comment, or intro?
I can intro since there's some
Bougie,
people I
let's
don't know.
hear it.
So I'm Brian, sometimes on the internet known as Bougie, or if it's Twitter, Bougie Baby. Don't ask. Nickname from Boy Scouts when I was a kid. Anyways, for those who I don't know, I'm a tech entrepreneur by nature, ecosystem builder, economic developer. I live in Puerto Rico currently. So if anyone's talking about Puerto Rico in the chat, it's probably me. I'll shill it to all of you and probably try to get all of you to move here as we're waiting for 2030. That being said, I've worked a lot behind the scenes, sometimes supporting projects since the beginning of blockchains and even before that. Everything from working with entrepreneurship centers, just starting little businesses, economic development, finding cities or towns that we could incorporate and create our own city. I've had plans for those since I was in high school. So this sort of thing is actually very natural for me. I do keep track of other projects across the board. Kind of if I was to distill all the random crazy stuff that I get involved, it probably distill down to foundational infrastructure, and that I don't mean for in this case network states or Web3 or for free communities, sovereign communities, and that spans everything from like one of our last tech startups was making plug and play home servers that you could own and control, creating your own trusted networks. You don't need a cloud, that sort of thing. So everything from hardware to protocol to even laws or jurisdictions where this kind of falls into place. Or you'll see on my Twitter, I have jurisdictional arbitrage.
Yeah, you're our unofficial lawyer for a while now.
Depending what it is, I may have some thoughts on legal, financial, whatever other matters, but I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a financial advisor, so don't actually listen to anything I say. But yeah, so just all around liking to support major projects and then sometimes roll up my sleeves and jump into them. Happy to connect with people on or offline. You're all always welcome to come to Puerto Rico. Happy to have this be a interim meeting spot if we need it and want to get prepped for island life, if that ever becomes a thing. So yeah, just brief introduction there.
Brian, thanks. And also not mentioned, one of my favorite qualities of you is a true family man, and have a really, really cute family. I'll use the word cute. Love to see the
I have
updates
4 little
there.
girls, and I do think they're all cute.
And twins. There's some twins there, right?
Yes, that too.
But I think you walk the walk where I still don't know the origin story of Puerto Rico, but at some point in time, you just had to, you were not from Puerto Rico. Like you picked up your whole family and moved there, and you are essentially helping Puerto Rico increase its population and talent and all that. And like all of that's going to be really important skills, right? So I'm not sure if you're still
Well, I guess that's
doing
worth
that
noting. So,
yeah.
So I guess after we sold our tech company in early 2019, I actually started working with essentially the attraction agency for businesses and investment to the island. So I actually lead all the efforts for the island for attracting innovation, investment, and entrepreneurship. So all day, every day, I'm actually working with innovators, investors, and entrepreneurs, helping them set up, optimize, come to the island. And I just find that very fulfilling, building out an ecosystem. So I'll definitely have a lot of thoughts and probably some real world experiences when it comes to a lot of the real economic development aspects of building out a jurisdiction. So that's something I'm very interested in having discussions and sharing my insights on. I've learned a lot in doing this sort of thing, and for an island, literally. So there's some nuances there that I think might be applicable. So I'm excited.
I love it. And you don't know Willie, do you? You guys don't know each other?
Only from sitting on Wednesday trying to buy into the ITO. because we were one of only like 4 people who jumped on. There's actually a Google Meet link in the calendar invite you sent,
No
so we jumped on
way.
it.
I didn't even know that. My bad. There should have been. Actually, that would have been a fun launch party. Maybe we'll do that in the future, like a
That's
meetup.
actually what I was anticipating. So I'm like, all right, there's going to be a bunch of people, and I mean, it's still fine, but yeah.
Thanks for catching. I just asked because Willie, when I was at the co-working space, Johnston, what's his first name? Is it David?
David Johnston. Yeah.
That was the one.
with him
That
right
was who
now.
I was talking about with David, is Brian. I'm not sure if you remember, but that's who I was referencing that we both know. Yeah.
Small world. Yeah, I didn't know your whole background, Brian. So super cool to hear about that and what you're working on in Puerto Rico. I've heard great things about Puerto Rico, and maybe there's some synergy with Epoch Island. It
Good
sounds.
spot.
Brian is
definitely could be.
a Swiss Army of so many things. Like I remember in the first year, Brian, I was like, "What do you do?" And it's just I learned about everything. Yeah.
Well, I'm still trying to figure that out. My wife hasn't figured it out. But I'm hoping AI, I can just upload my life into one that I actually trust. Hopefully, maybe Morpheus or whatever, and then it can tell me what I am or what I'm good at. So, still working on it.
Love it. All right, guys, we're coming up on 2 hours. Which is it 2? Wait, we started at 10, right? Yeah. In Moai Labs time, this is nothing. We have what we call Titanic calls, which are 3 to 4 hours. But I do think I would enjoy a day with some family time and some other things here. But I'd love to give like any last opportunity for anybody that'd like an intro. Or got Maine McFly here. What's up, Maine?
Yeah, I'd like to introduce myself. As you know already, I mentioned earlier, I'm from Germany, and I'm here mostly because I read on Twitter a post from Byron from Looping in November, and as you can think, I'm very critical of the current state of the so-called conservative states. So I'm pretty interested in this project, and I hope I can put some effort and some thoughts I already have in this too. And I'm very lucky and very happy to be here.
Awesome. I'll have to ask you the same question. What was the first job you ever had?
While I was in school, I did some facility works. And after school, I learned to be a car mechanic. Yeah, that's my first.
They said cow. I heard cow mechanic for a second. I was like, wait a second.
No, car.
Is that a job? That would be pretty cool. Steve would be interested in hearing about cow mechanics. Well, awesome. I do have one more question for you. How did you hear about? Did you already mention how you heard about Epoch?
Yeah, Byron from Blueprint.
Okay, Byron. Okay,
exactly.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Well, before you guys leave, anybody, if you guys could leave your Telegram, Steve. So I want to collect people's information. Well, we already know most people's here that we can hit up, but Steve will be responsible for making sure everybody gets some Epoch tokens for being part of today's meeting. I hope if we can get this same amount of energy and quality conversations every week, I don't think we'll be able to do that every week, but if we can, this project is going to do really well. This is only going to grow. Eventually, this meeting is going to just keep evolving. So, yeah, please. I know that not everybody's going to make it on Fridays. I understand that, but this one for a first one, I'm really, really, really happy with. So, thank you everybody who joined here.